So, back at it. I like when I'm able to get in this natural environment, you know? Like, it reminds me of what music used to be like that 70s era when Michael Jackson was popping. Like, Quincy Jones had access, you know, working for those labels to be able to get those musicians on their stuff. After a while, the music started changing because it was easier to make cheaper music, right? Vinyl records, to tape records, to CDs, all that happened from like 80s to 90s. And then by the 90s, especially in urban music, it was a lot of sampling going on, which is all good because that was like the golden era of hip hop. It was the best times. It was like when it was just the minimum and it was the 4-track stuff going on. It was just drums, bass, sample, and maybe a little effects or a little tinker or something over the top of that. It was amazing. And the most minimal music is still nice. As the years went on, there's really been no change, but it's not a whole lot of people who are putting the real instruments or experimenting with real instruments. Nobody's really trying to incorporate that in the music anymore because it costs so much. People who can pay that high ticket, you can get those real musicians in your music, and I got access to make it affordable. It's one of the services on my site. The link is in the description, but it's definitely something that has to be negotiated because everybody's range is different. Some people may be able to afford a certain amount for one single track, and then other people can afford another amount for an entire EP or album just to get some musicians in there. If you stay realistic in your mind and you realize that back in the day, labels used to pay these people thousands and thousands of dollars. Used to get into 5-6 figures just to maybe get an orchestra in your stuff or to maybe just get a couple of session players in their stuff, because some session players created a name for themselves and they got on everybody's tracks, but it came at a cost. Especially people like Scott Storch, Questlove, they went up from their positions and started doing executive producing, had composing or musician session credits, but after a while, it's like, nah, man, they gotta reach even higher. And they were already being paid pretty hefty, but they had to just keep going up and going up. And I'm not mad at them. Exactly what I would do if I was still playing saxophone. I would definitely be like, okay, the ticket on my stuff is going higher because I know my value now, which is pretty much the case now with what I'm talking about in this video. I have that access. You know, I have access to musicians. I have access to mixing and mastering. I can play saxophone myself. I can mix and master myself. But as I grow and expand with this, I know it's gonna require a lot more demand and management, and I'm more of the type of producer on that level where it's executive managing type work. If a person needs a guitarist or they need a bass player or they need a drummer, I'm that guy. I'm that guy that can get it done for you. But it's definitely maybe something that's beyond the average person's budget, beyond the budget of someone who just searches on YouTube and rips type beats off of YouTube. It's definitely beyond that budget. No shade to those people because those people have popped off some great records. Some of them may have had to pay the costs more than they wanted to later, but hey, if it wasn't for them, then it would have never happened. This would definitely be beyond the budget of someone who can just pay for a Lease beat, definitely beyond that $25 to $50 to $75 range. When you're trying to get session musicians on your stuff, you gotta recognize these are real people. It's not just samples that you're dealing with, or it's not just one person playing several instruments, like it's a couple different people with different skills, you know. And then you got me being the person who can communicate ideas between a person like an artist and the session musicians, and I can bring the ideas to life. Maybe keep it organic, natural sounding. Maybe that's all that a person would envision in 2021. It's like, hey, let's get back to that old sound. Kind of like how Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars are doing right now, you know, where they brought back that 70s sound with real instruments, real live players. But you can even go beyond that. Imagine those instruments each individually processed with certain sounds. Say you're able to process that and make it sound like Travis Scott vocals, making the violin sound like Travis Scott vocals, or making the guitar sound like a Kanye vocal from like 808s and Heartbreaks or something. Like that's the type of thing that's possible in 2021. Putting that effect that was on the Jason Derulo record where he sampled Emotion Heat and taking that effect and putting it on a guitar, you know, that's the type of stuff. Or putting that on like a horn player, French horn player, putting that on a whole horn section, saxophone, trombone, trumpet, tuba, all in one section, and just put the whole effect on that one section and mess with the EQ a little bit. Some cool ideas, right? But to be able to bring some of these ideas to life, you have to have the resources. And these resources are certainly not as expensive as they used to be when Michael Jackson had access or when Prince had access, but they're definitely still more expensive than what the average musician can pay for. And that's why a lot of the music is going to stay really cheap sounding, which is okay. Like, I love my digital music, man. I play my digital beats on everything. I still sell my digital beats that have no live instrumentation in it, you know. But the people who are really able to separate from the pack are going to be those people who can really innovate. Innovation comes at a cost. Can't just expect to innovate on the same sounds over and over again. You can only go so far with these digital sounds. Some of this stuff, it sounds very similar. I mean, there's other factors that play into that, like everybody wants to be on top 40, right? But if everybody wants to be on top 40 and the person in the first spot is the one to pass, then everybody's trying to make something similar to that. That's a whole nother argument, a whole nother issue, but this is another aspect of it, because that's what happened with analog stuff, right? Or that's what happened with the original live instrumentation. Everybody was doing live instrumentation in their sessions. You had to change stuff up. You got to change things up in order to have hopes in passing that person that's in the first spot. People like The Weeknd stayed in that Hot 100 Billboard for a long time with this past album. It was, like a good year and a half, maybe. And a year and some change, he was on that Billboard. And I think it still might be in there somewhere, at least the top 200 at this point, because he decided to take that 80s sound and innovate with that 80s sound. Yeah, most of the instrumentation is still very much digitized, but there was some innovation to make it sound really clean and really nice, like it's like premium 80s. You can imagine innovating on the sound of just live environment, maybe even make instruments based off just environment sounds, which is cool. That's very possible. And that's a whole nother can of worms. That's also something that I have access to. I have the resources, I have the ideas, I have the knowledge to help bring any ideas you have like that to life. I know I may have sparked a lot of ideas with this video, man. I done said some crazy stuff. I might even try out some of this stuff when I go back to the lab. There's times to make limits. There's reasons to have those, but something else to keep in mind and to keep in perspective is what happens when you work within limitations in a couple different areas and combine those. Combine the limitations of what a natural sounding instrument sounds like, mixed with modern processing, mixed with something that doesn't even exist yet, like environmental instruments. What if I made the sound of this wind sound like an instrument, and then combine that? It's cool stuff. This is why people need music producers. And a lot of people just download these beats offline, but you don't really have anyone to bounce ideas off of. That's where somebody like me comes in. And instead of just offering beats, I offer services. I offer very detailed services. Very detailed services that could take your project from here to there. Because as a music producer, I have to separate myself from the pack as well, right? Dealing with artists, every artist wants to be unique and different to try to get that #1 spot. Good, but how unique and different can one artist get when they're just downloading or ripping beats off YouTube, the ceiling is right above your head dealing with that type of stuff, you know? But when you're actually dealing with a real music producer and you're paying a real music producer for their service, then you're on to something that can be real and new and different, if that's what you're going for. Because also with the help of a music producer, you may not want to be so unique and so different. You may not want that. You may want to blend in with that commercial sound, and you may want to say, hey, I want something that sounds very similar to the top 10 sounds on Billboard. I'm here for it. In that case, if we're not talking about a Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak type situation right now, then you are talking about some digitized stuff, which is okay. But also you may have some slight variation ideas that you would want to try to make yourself stand out from that crowd of the top 40 or top 10. What's really important is getting the sound that you're looking for. Not just looking for it yourself. You can A&R your project all day by scrolling all the beats on YouTube or on BeatStars or Airbit or something like that. But what you really need is someone to work close to, who understands what you're trying to get done and can get you there. But it takes some sacrifice. You can't just expect to get all this stuff for free. Maybe you have a talent beyond creating music and you can assist someone. Maybe you went to school for marketing and you're really thinking about taking your music career serious. Well, if you got marketing skills, hey, that could be a great assist to a music producer if you can show and prove that. If you can show and prove that you have really done some things in marketing, I'm sure that you could be valuable to a music producer beyond just a monetary exchange. You just gotta click and network. You gotta shoot them an email, shoot them a DM, talk to them, talk to me, especially me. And if you got marketing skills, I'm here for that all day. Talk to me about where I can get that copyright for the low that's not Fiverr. Let me get it even for even more low in quality. Like, what's up? Where we at with it? And it helps to know that type of stuff on your own so that you can implement things like that, like email campaigns, SMS campaigns, promotions and promotion tools on different sites, influencer marketing. It helps to understand a lot of that stuff by yourself so you don't have to lean so hard onto someone else. It's just like the modern artist, the modern singer or rapper. You shouldn't be solely depending on the studio. You should definitely have some sort of way to record yourself, because even though you may want that feeling that one of your favorite artists talked about in the studio, where they went to the studio and it was magic and the environment gave them so much inspiration. Inspiration is 1% of the process. Presperation is 99%. Just like talent is only 10% of this whole process. The business is 90%. Gotta remember things like this. So, all right, hey, well, as always, follow me on all social media platforms. MilesGotBeats on everything. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Get at me. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you feel about some of these ideas. And I think I dropped some gems by accident this time. But stay in touch. Get up with me. Let's go.